Slott showed he won't be afraid to stamp his authority on this Liverpool side, as we saw Liverpool drift away from some of the old Klopp methods. Granted, the Reds still have a lot of players away on pre-season, but the principles on display promise a new and exciting Liverpool, and perhaps a big season for this man in particular. But big questions were also raised about some glaring weaknesses of Slott's setup. They were a 4-3-3 on paper that looked like this, but they were almost never in this setup on the field. The first interesting thing is how Slott used his fullbacks. Classic Klopp Liverpool, particularly a few years ago, was built around two marauding fullbacks, but we didn't see any of that. But what we also didn't see was the rising trend of fullbacks inverting into the midfield. What we saw instead was Slott keeping both of them remaining deep and wide, usually in line with the midfield line, although Tsimikas was the more conservative, so occasionally when they were being pressed by a front two, he could drop in to give them an outlet option as the third man. Slott kept these men here though, because he wanted to keep the onus on his wingers to be the ones giving the team all of the width, and this forces the Betis fullbacks to pay attention in these zones. Betis were fairly aggressive with a 4-4-2 mid-block, meaning their wingers could be drawn to those deep wingers, and that leaves 1-versus-1 situations where the physicality of the wingers can come into play. And Carvalho and Salah were keen to attack the space left in behind by the high defensive line. But it's the Slott midfield that was truly exciting, because as mentioned, the 4-3-3 was a rarer occurrence. Slott, as he likes to do, used a dedicated double pivot. In this match, Jones and Endo. And Szoboszlai was not just the higher man playing as an attacking midfielder, instead, he and Elliott were up top, but operating as false nines so that Liverpool looked more like a 4-box-2. And this brought a lot of exciting opportunities. There was a lot of onus on the pivots to do all of the progression, and having two men to aim for between the lines made their lives easier, and on rare occasions they were able to receive and turn. But the truth is that the opposition in their 4-4-2 defensive shape did a good job of making sure the centre-backs could not directly find the pivots, but having floaters meant they had another option: the wall pass. The centre-back could look to skip the first line and hit a man between the lines who could then pass it to the pivot who had been tied up, suddenly allowing progression. Which is exactly what happens here, as it's a rarer occasion where Endo is high and Jones looks to be tied up, but the centre-back can hit Endo who plays backs to Jones who can potentially now receive facing the opposition. Or if the false nine created enough separation between himself and the centre-back, he could be the man to receive and then look to create. But that was just the start of the possibilities, because Szoboszlai in particular thrived in this position because of his excellent movement. With Betis going pivot to pivot, and both Bradley and Salah tying up their fullbacks as discussed, it meant that there was always a dangerous amount of room created here. Room that Szoboszlai was happy to take advantage of when his wide men were tying up their men 1v1, allowing him to receive and instantly push the team up the pitch. And because he was wreaking so much havoc, Betis were forced to react, with the centre-back trying to close him down before he could receive in those spaces between the lines and turn. But that just led to even more issues for Betis, as now they had a high line and a hole in their defence that Salah would be happy to attack over the top. This is best shown in the solitary goal, where Szoboszlai actually receives between the lines, forcing the centre-back high, and creating a 1v1 for Salah. Szoboszlai can then use his explosive movement to attack the space he created to finish. But don't underestimate the fullback in this system, particularly Connor Bradley, because while it's not the traditional overlap that made him dangerous, the underlap threatened to kill off Betis. Again, this was made possible by a combination of these three. With Szoboszlai terrorizing his man, Salah stayed wide with the left-back glued on him, and this made space here where Bradley was more than quick enough to consistently attack and get into great positions for the cutback. But there were also huge questions raised, assuming this is Slott's chosen setup. This shape means that almost all of the progression has to come through the pivots, and with Liverpool still not having a dedicated metronome, though McAllister did a great job last season, Opposition sides can find a lot of success impressing Liverpool's pivots to keep their back to goal, or even to win the ball back, like we saw several times today. If that is combined with how much Slott's centre-backs were needing to dribble out under pressure, the clear conclusion is that the Reds need to make sure they have the right personnel in the deep areas to make this possible. It will also be interesting to see how Slott adapts when he plays sides who defend in a more conservative 4-4-2, with the forwards tying up the pivots and the midfield preventing the ball into the false nines. The solution in that case may end up being adding a progression option from wide in Trent. The other question is a personnel issue. If Liverpool do persist with this setup, where would the likes of Núñez play? It's unlikely that he has the technical ability to operate in the false nine position, meaning the only logical position would be out on the flank, but that would also have a knock-on effect on other forwards who are more traditional wingers. I'm curious to see what you think his first choice 11 will be, down in the comments below. And what did you make of this opening salvo from Slott? And if you are curious about why every new manager plays like Pep, check out this video.